Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to our second week studying space and our solar system. If you remember, we have a diagram with our planets. Help me to sing the song that helps us remember the names of the planet and the order that they are from the sun. Ready? Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. We'll sing it one more time. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. Boys and girls, today's story has to do with the moon. You see in our diagram the moon that orbits around the Earth. We can look up at the moon at nighttime and sometimes in the daytime and see it. Today our story is called The Moon Book. Let's learn some facts about our moon. As the sun sets at the end of each day, the sky becomes darker and darker. On many clear nights, our moon shines brightly in the night sky. Our moon is the brightest and biggest light in our night sky. It outshines all the stars and planets, which appear as small as points of light. Some planets have many moons. Earth has one. Our moon looks big and bright because it is so close to Earth compared to the faraway stars and planets. It is about 900,000 miles away. Here is the Earth, and there's the distance between the Earth and the moon. 238,900 miles away from the Earth. The moon makes no light of its own to shine. It is bright in the night sky because it reflects the sun's light. It is about 1/4 the size of the Earth. It's made up of rock and dust. There's no air or sign of life. Most scientists and astronomers think our moon formed about 4.5 billion years ago. Some believe something collided with the Earth that tossed out a cloud of rock and debris. While orbiting around the Earth, the rock and debris came together to form the moon. Very interesting. In ancient times, people thought the moon was a powerful god or goddess. The Romans called their moon goddess Diana. In Greece, the moon goddess was Selene, who rode through the sky in a silver chariot. Some American Indian tribes believed the moon and the sun were brother and sister gods. Stories and legends were told about the shapes and shadows that show on the moon's surface. Some people said the moon showed a man's face. Have you heard of the man in the moon? Who was imprisoned there for stealing. Others told of moon demons living there. The moon is Earth's only natural satellite. It takes about 1 month for the moon to travel around the Earth. Here you can see the orbit of the moon around the Earth. The moon makes one complete rotation for each complete trip around Earth. Thus, the same side of the moon is always facing the Earth. The moon appears to change shape, but it doesn't. The different shapes we see are called phases of the moon. We are seeing different amounts of light being reflected on the moon. How much light we see depends on the positions of Earth, moon, and sun. Here we're going to see, boys and girls, some pictures of phases of the moon. This is what the new moon looks like. Do you see how it's very shaded? You can hardly see it at all. During a new moon, the moon is almost directly between the sun and the Earth. The moon looks dark. we can see no reflected light. This is a crescent-shaped moon. The moon is waxing when the lit surface we see is getting bigger. In a few days, a bit of the sunlight of the sunlit side of the moon shows. It forms a crescent shape. This is called first quarter moon. When the moon is a quarter of its way around Earth, it is in its first quarter phase. We see it as half lit. It is sometimes called a half moon. Gibbous moon. When the moon is waxing between a first quarter moon and a full moon, it is called a gibbous moon. Full moon. About 2 weeks have passed since the new moon. Now the entire face of the moon we see shines. Gibbous moon. The moon is waning when the lit surface we see starts to get smaller. When the moon is waning between a full moon and a last quarter moon, it is a gibbous moon once again. Last quarter moon. When the moon is 3/4 of its way around the Earth, it is in its last quarter phase. Again, we see it as half lit. It is sometimes called a half moon. Oh, look, it's crescent moon again. Once again, we see a small sliver of moon shining in the sky. New moon. It takes the moon about 1 month to go through its entire set of phases. People used to know the time of the month by watching the moon's phases. Solar eclipse. The moon's orbit around Earth is usually tilted slightly compared to the Earth's orbit around the sun. Because of this, the moon cannot exactly line up between the sun and the Earth. But when the moon's orbit is not tilted, the moon lines up exactly between the sun and the Earth, and a solar eclipse happens. The moon's shadow falls on Earth. A solar eclipse can last up to 7½ minutes. A lunar eclipse. When the sun, Earth, and moon are exactly lined up, a lunar eclipse happens. As in a solar eclipse, the moon's orbit is not tilted. The Earth blocks off the sunlight that usually lights up the moon. It gives the moon a reddish glow. Lunar comes from luna, the Latin word for moon. A lunar eclipse can last up to 3½ hours. The moon affects the oceans too. The moon's pull, called gravity, on the oceans is strong enough to cause tides. Tides are the rising and falling of the ocean's water. This is because the moon takes about 25 hours to come back to the same place in the sky. Tide differences vary around the world. Some of the night sky gazers and astronomers can get a close-up view of the moon by looking through binoculars. Others look through telescopes. Some huge telescopes are used at observatories. Take a look, boys and girls. This is a close-up view of the moon's surface showing dark patches astronomers called plains or seas. Other areas are covered with craters, mountains, and valleys. The moon's craters were formed between 3.5 and... For centuries, people have wanted to know more about our moon. In 1959, the Soviet spacecraft Luna 3 transmitted to Earth the first pictures of the far side or back of the moon. And in 1961, President John F. Kennedy made a commitment to put Americans on the moon before the end of the decade. Surveyor 1 landed on the moon in 1966 and sent back information about the moon's surface. On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong and Edwin or Buzz Aldrin of the Apollo 11 mission became the first men to walk on the moon. Since then, there have been more landings on the moon. On a clear night when the moon is in the sky, gaze up at it. We are still learning more about our closest neighbor, the moon. Very interesting facts, boys and girls, about the moon. Can you go back and notice some facts that you thought were interesting from our moon book? Maybe it has to do with the phases of the moon. Maybe it has to do with the solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse. And you're going to write about that today in your reader's notebook. Have fun reading and writing about the moon.